next up, I'm really excited to be joined by Melati from YOUTHTOPIA. So I'll get Melati to join us on stage. Welcome.
Oh, hello.
Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It was a little bit difficult to hear everyone, but I only got the headsets at the halfway through. So,
all right.
But I'm excited to be here today.
Perfect. Good to have you. Good to have you. So you actually became an activist with 10 years old.
Yes.
Together with your sister in Bali when you were campaigning and started an organization that advocated for stopping plastic bags.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that journey and then how you got to run YOUTHTOPIA, and then we'll jump straight into the problem and how young people can be part of the solution.
Of course. And hello, everybody. My name is Melati. I'm 24 years old. I introduce myself always as a full-time change maker. But as you heard, my journey started a very, very, very long time ago. More than half of my life has been dedicated to this fight against plastic pollution, where growing up on the island of Bali, it was simple. When we saw the problem, we thought, what are we going to do about it? And sometimes life can be that simple. My sister and I thought enough is enough. What are we going to do about it? And so without a business plan, without a big budget or a marketing strategy, but with a very clear vision, we started our first organization called Bye Bye Plastic Bags. And the mission in the name, nice and simple, we wanted our home of Bali to be plastic bag free. And we started building a movement that became much bigger than two sisters on the island, with a collaboration across many different industry leaders, many different organizations, and together with all of this momentum that we were building collectively on the island, in 2019 an actual ban on plastic bags, straws and styrofoam finally came into place. So yes, we showed that people power can be more powerful than the people in power. And so yeah, now after years of doing that, I started YOUTHTOPIA, which is more on youth empowerment and peer-to-peer education. And I'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah, maybe let's start with your early journey and then transition over to YOUTHTOPIA. What do you think was kind of the biggest factor of actually bringing about that change when you first became an activist? Is it just about getting the biggest possible group to support you? What was like the thing that really turned and gave you the traction to have the impact that you had?
So when we started, it was 2013, and let me be very clear with the first thing. Saying no to plastic bags is nothing new and nothing special. Many, many organizations and people all around the world have been campaigning for this message years before us. What we had on our advantage were two things. One, timing. People were fed up with the plastic pollution. They saw it every day as well, and they were fed up with it. They thought as well, what are we going to do about it? So there was this momentum, there was this time that was building, and we had that to our advantage. The other aspect was that we were 10 and 12 years old, a bunch of kids on the island standing up and saying, this is the change we want, and if we can do it, you can do it too. So I think that was two very powerful advantages that we had, but also the recognition that we couldn't do it alone. So what we had established in our organization very early on was a deep sense of collaboration, and not only with the people who agree with you, not only the other organizers and the other campaigners who've envisioned the same type of change, but we also worked with the hotel industry. We also worked with our local politicians. We worked and sat hours after school with our local mayors and our local organizers and tried to build a narrative that was much bigger than one organization or one solution to come together for this change. And I think that that was really what helped build the momentum that led to this ban on plastic bags on the island.
Amazing. Let's talk about YOUTHTOPIA, because with YOUTHTOPIA, your mission really is educating the next generation of young innovators, and you're really helping them learn on how to have an impact. So I'd love to understand your approach to that, because activism in climate, activism in plastics has been around for decades and decades. And we find ourselves this year especially, or the last couple of years, kind of moving opposite directions, probably not the direction that all of us will want to move in. If we look at what's happening globally, if we're looking at what's happening in the US. is there anything that we need to change, like us here at ChangeNOW, or that you're teaching the activists that you're working with at YOUTHTOPIA, that we need to change in our approach? Because we've been campaigning for long. Yes, there has been successes, a lot, but we're still like so far away from where we want to go, right?
Okay, there's a lot that I want to unpack here.
Huge question.
Yeah, a couple of things that come to mind. The first thing is I learned very quickly as well, the more focused your end goal is, the easier it is to build momentum, the easier it is to invite people into the movement. So what is your call to action as an organization, as an individual? We were so clear with bye-bye plastic bags. And I think that that clarity allowed us to walk into rooms and negotiate with our local politicians, mobilize and get more partners involved, and also encourage more team members and other young people to join the team. So a clear goal, because the second aspect here is that we have to remember we cannot be everything to everyone. And that's also not the point. Every single person in this room has their own unique skills and their own unique strengths. How can we look collectively at what needs to be done and fill the gaps that are not filled? A business cannot do what a young change maker is doing. A young change maker cannot do what an investor needs to be doing. And on it goes. So I think really the shift or the change that we can all bring back home is the power that we have as individuals, contributing it back to the collective movement that we need. So this is something that, as a young founder, having started Bye Bye Plastic Bags and now also building YOUTHTOPIA, is something I'm so incredibly proud but also grateful for, this ecosystem of change makers where we all understand a very big job needs to be done, and we all arrive there in different ways. So it's about creating narratives where we feel the invitation to do that, to be that best person and that best change maker we can be.
Can you share any examples from your work with YOUTHTOPIA on change makers that have had a tremendous impact on plastics and like how they went about it?
Yeah, so first of all, what is YOUTHTOPIA? After 10 years of working on Bye Bye Plastic Bags and traveling around the world, sharing the story of what me and my sister were able to achieve at 10 and 12 years old, we always got one question, no matter where we were, if it was in a classroom in Tokyo or in New York City or in the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. And that one question was always the same. It was, Melati, how can I create change? Where do I start? And so YOUTHTOPIA is a learning platform which currently has 5,000 students and over 300 programs, all for free, created by young change makers for young change makers. So we really lean into this peer-to-peer education where we learn from each other's experiences, what went right, what went wrong, what could have gone better, through master classes, workshops, and all of that. I'd highly recommend and invite you all to check out the platform. And what I love the most about it is the different role models, and I heard in the conversation when I was tuning in on my headsets, the power of role models, right? We cannot become it if we do not see it. And when we talk about raising a generation of change makers, who are the change makers that we know or that we see? We most likely all know Greta Thunberg, or before there was a lovely change maker, Shea Bastida. There are a couple more change makers here. I know Inez, I know Fionn is here as well. All of these different role models are so important because then students and young people around us can look up and say, okay, that's my strength as well, or I resonate and relate to the most with this change maker or that change maker. And in terms of examples, Fionn, for example, who is matching me in my jacket, but in a different color, we're twinning, is an incredible innovator, chemist, inventing a device that magnets microplastic. I'm sorry, you're going to have to do a better job at pitching yourself, my dear. But, you know, there's so many different ways of how young people are tackling. Amy Meek, I think, was at another ChangeNOW, campaigning against plastic bags and plastic pollution in general as well in the UK. So there are many different ways of how young people are approaching this in many different parts of the world.
Do you think we need to do a better job building alliances between innovators, activists, people in policy? You know, ChangeNOW is such a great opportunity because a lot of these people from different backgrounds are here. What is kind of the one thing that you think we do need to change to kind of accelerate the speed of change?
I would love to see more intergenerational collaborations taking place, and I'm getting a lot of nods in the audience as well, because I think this is something where we'll see more accelerated solutions. But how do we establish these intergenerational collaborations where we get these big businesses and CEOs who are in the decision-making rooms to connect with young people who are full of ideas but maybe lack resources? first and foremost, that meaningful collaboration outside of a press conference, outside of the big headlines in the media, has to first be established. And in my new book, Change Starts Now, I have an entire chapter on this, where we dive deeper on how to establish those collaborations. But the reason why I say that this is something that I'd like to see more of is because I think far too often we're stuck in our ways of doing it and oftentimes operate in our separate silos. And one of the biggest frustrations I have working with many of these different levels of society is the frustration from young people not knowing where to go to find the resources, and then these big businesses or these leaders in positions of powers not having the inspiration or not finding the solutions that are so clearly here. So it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And I think building bridges through more of those intergenerational collaborations is a must.
How much is it about agency as well? I think very often you hear about young people feeling like they don't have as much agency. They're growing up in a world that's been designed by older generations that doesn't quite serve them, where they use social media platforms that have been designed to make you addicted, use plastic products. It's like surrounded by all this stuff that you didn't create. How do you feel can we take more young people on the journey from feeling like they don't have agency to then becoming change makers? I'm sure you work with a lot of people that are kind of naturally inclined to be change makers, but do you feel like there's a need for like more of a broader movement of inspiring people that feel like they have a lack of agency, but they could actually take charge of the situation?
I mean, great question. And I'm going to ask a question to all of you. How many of you say, yes, I am a change maker? Okay, a couple hands go up, but I do this, I also did this in my speech earlier this morning. The reason why I asked this question is because essentially every single hand should be up, right? So what needs to happen here? How do we move and activate this sense of agency? First and foremost, it's a change in definition of what it takes to be a change maker. Because this movement of change needs everyone. What is your strength? Are you a writer? Are you really great at research? Are you a connector? Are you an investor? Are you someone who can pick up the guitar and write a wonderful song, right? All of these different skills contribute back to being a change maker. And when we work with YOUTHTOPIA and go into schools and classrooms, oftentimes I'm at conferences where speakers will tell actually this really did happen, where at one conference, one of the speakers was asking the children to repeat after them and say, okay, to be a real leader, you have to be the king of the jungle. So be a lion and don't be a sheep. So this kid of 300 people were saying, be a lion, don't be a sheep. Be a lion, don't be a sheep. Because that's what leadership looks like. But again, a shift in a narrative. What if you aren't a lion? And what if you don't want to be a sheep, but you want to be a zebra or a butterfly? Great. A healthy, biodiverse ecosystem also has all of these different animals. And so it's a nice little story of what actually needs to be reflected in the human world and how we forgot to celebrate all the different strengths and skills that we each need. So it's about breaking down the definition of what it means to be a change maker, what it means to be a leader. You don't have to be a founder, you don't have to be great at public speaking if that's not what and how you want to contribute back to the movement. So I think it's about reconstructing this invitation to being part of the movement and making it more accessible, more relatable by providing different change makers, role models who are actively doing it. And then the first step is just getting started, because it's a long journey ahead and you learn as you go. Trust me, I've been doing this for a very long time, from 12 years old all the way through to 24.
What is the kind of biggest lesson that people in power right now can learn from young change makers? And maybe vice versa as well.
Okay.
What change makers can learn to actually get into positions of power to change.
Well, actually, I'm going to quote an interview that I heard recently of an entrepreneur that was asked a question of, like, what's the biggest lie you've been told? And this entrepreneur begins answering the question of the journalist, and he goes, well, it's not that simple. And the journalist goes, no, but I just want to know what's, the biggest lie that you've been told. And the guy says, no, that's the biggest lie. It's not that simple. It is. And I think the power of young people, especially in this rooms, is breaking it down, where sometimes world leaders are so consumed by which text and which numbers and how the data needs to be translated that we forget how simple it is when we walk on the beach and we see plastic pollution. We know that that's wrong, that we don't want that. And so I think young people serve that as a fresh reminder, as a stark reminder. And vice versa, I think that we can also learn that there's a lot of experience and that there's a lot of resources, and it does, like, change can happen. Dreams do come true. So I think when we find role models from older generations, it's really important to hold on to that, because otherwise we end up in the loss of hope, which I believe was also a conversation topic in the last section.
Well, let's double click on that, right? What needs to happen for us to inspire more hope? Because at the moment, it seems like a lot of people I talk to are losing hope, and to some degree are resigning to some degree, or it's a difficult environment out there to be an activist, difficult environment in a corporate world to make the case for sustainable solutions. I don't know how many of you are working in large corporates trying to advocate for solutions. It's difficult, right? So what is it that gives you hope and that should give everybody hope here in the audience?
I think a challenge of mine that I make sure to keep every week is to reach out to at least 3 change makers within either the YOUTHTOPIA network or in my friend circle, and having a conversation of 20 minutes just to hear how and what they are up to. I think these grounding conversations, it can seem so simple, but again, never underestimate the power of a conversation. When you learn and put yourself in a position where you have access to these stories, suddenly the change that has to happen, or the work that still needs to be done, doesn't seem so far away anymore, but instead is grounded in real life examples and real life stories. And I think this is really important because there's an exercise of imagination that needs to happen, just like how we take care of our physical body. Oftentimes you hear, you know, did you go to the gym? Did you drink enough water? What did you eat today? You know, all of these physical elements of how we take care of our physical body also has to happen with our mind and our imagination. Why? Because if we cannot see it, if we cannot dream it, if we don't know what the future tastes like, feels like, how can we ever work towards it? And I think we start planting those seeds from conversations with people around us and in our networks. So having access to inspiration is the first step of how you can keep that going.
I mean, you're definitely a big part of that, and ChangeNOW is a big part of that. And people should definitely check out your book as well, which is a big part of that as well.
It's in the bookstore.
So quick plug for the book, maybe?
It's called Change Starts Now, and it has 100 lessons from everything I learned from 12 years old to 24. And I go a little bit in a reflective storytelling of what was going on in my 12-year-old brain, the frustrations. You hear some really, really cringy poetry that we love at 13 years old when I first left the government meeting and change still didn't happen, but what I went through to keep on going and going and going, all the way through tips on intergenerational collaboration. There's a list at the end of the book of 100 other young change makers and that you can continue learning from. So yeah, it's my first book, 4 months officially a published author, and it's been absolutely amazing. But I learn every day, and I hope that yeah, this is also just the beginning of so much more to come.
Thank you, Melati, for joining us. Thanks for all of our panelists, and Sean earlier for joining us. Thank you so much.